National Cloud un anno dopo. Perché un anno dopo? Perché di
1 year
National Cloud
later.
abbiamo
Why is that?
parlato al Salotto
National Cloud, we spoke about it last
tra i
year.
temi da votare e
It was
evidentemente
re-offered
l'interesse
in the
ancora
theme
alto.
to vote,
Per
and
cui
it was
appunto
voted once
è proprio
again.
in programma.
So,
Abbiamo qui
here we are.
un program
We have
committee
today
molto nutrito che si
a
è
program
occupato di
committee
curare i contenuti di questa sessione.
well nourished
Sono Michele
that cure the
Cannella,
contents.
Head of Business
Michele
Development
Cannella,
of Fiber Telecom, Amedeo
Head of
Chiappini,
Business
partner
Development
Metrika,
of Fiber Telecom,
Genna,
Amedeo Chiappini,
partner
Metrika,
Cabinet,
Innocenzo
Roberto,
Genna,
CTO
founder of Genna
e
Cabinet,
Alberto Szakvary, Senior Sales
Dedagroup,
Engineer di
Roberto
Equinix.
CTO, e Roberto Szakvary,
Molto per
Equinix.
il lavoro svolto.
A committee I still thank for the job they've done, and Innocenzo Genna, between them, volunteer to be the moderator for this session. I invite him on the stage. He'll give you a short introduction, and then we have the speaker of the session. Thank you. Yours the stage. Hello, thank you. So, I'd like to thank the colleagues, but this was already done. So, the National Cloud, the theme is, as you know, this year was approved. We signed the contract. We reached an important goal. There were some shocking moments, as there were some participants that then withdrew. There was a lowering in the prices, so it was. We had like lots of surprises. It's an important choice for the country, and it'll be interesting to see with our guests what happened in different countries in this same topic. The panel wants to discuss this theme, also considering what is still open in the debate, especially the industrial politics choices that are in the PSN, still open to discussion, and the digital sovereignty. Let's not forget that there was a change in government, and there might be some discontinuity elements with the new one. On some theme with the white band, there were already expressed some changes. Let's see if regarding the cloud it will be the same or will move ahead as in the project. I invite on the stage Lucas Buthion, Public Affair of Scaleway. Scaleway is, for those who don't know, the cloud part of the group Free with Iliad. Lucas, please. Is our foreign guest. So let's give him a big round of applause. He came just today from Paris and is leaving tonight, so did a huge effort to be here. Antonio Baldassarra, one of our habitués of this room. Michele Porcu di Oracle. Again, no need to introduce him. With them, we would like to talk about 3 different topics. So we'll divide the time 3-4 minutes each. The 3 teams we'd like to introduce are: is there still a space for a national space for the cloud, different from the hyperscaler? If this alternative should be left to the market, or should we have politics, and what kind of politics should we have? And lastly, if considering the PSN, if it's still it makes sense to talk about the sovereignty or the data, what kind of model, or is this now a lost battle? Let's start with the first one then. We have national operator on a side and global hyperscalers from the others. Do we still have space for the national industry to compete this battle with the giant of the web. Let's start with Lucas.
Thank you very much, Innocenzo. And I'm afraid I will
Thank
be
you,
one of the very
Innocenzo.
few non-Italian speaker today.
I'll be one of the few non-Italian speakers today. I'm sorry. My Italian skills are still low. So first of all, thank you for inviting me and giving the courtesy to give to our French industrialists this panel. We do believe that it is still possible to challenge the current positions on the cloud markets today in Europe. Not only possible, but desirable. So the situation today is quite of a challenge because, as you all know, the markets in Europe are dominated by 3 or 4 players. So 75% of the markets have extra-European players. European cloud players stand for like 16% of the market position. Interestingly enough, it's a fact, 4 years before the positions of the players was 27%. So in 4 years, the European positions have dropped. This is the first element. Consequences of this stage are that it creates a collective situation of hyper-dependency of players. When our economies and society are increasingly depending on digital information processes and cloud technology, which makes it desirable to rely further on European cloud players. This being said, a few reasons to be optimistic. First of all, even if it sounds like a paradox, Europe is lagging behind on cloud adoption, meaning if we compare European member states,
Northern America or Asia,
cloud adoption compared to North America or Asia, we are potentially 5 years late compared to other continents. You can see Eurostat figures regarding this, which means that the markets will either boom in the next few years, we get the cloud decay in the continent, which is also a boulevard of opportunities for the domestic players. So that's a first element of optimism. And secondly, in France, in Italy, in different European countries, we are now a strong and dynamic tech system, cloud players, which makes me react to a term you use talking about European operators. I would refer rather to providers, not operators. Operating is one side, providing is another segment, which is also important. So the situation is challenging. It has never been so desirable to rely on local providers and local technology providers. Never been so realistic to go toward this balanced condition in Europe. What is the market share in France of the local European players?
So as I was saying,
compared to the apex scaler?
In my introduction, the studies we have from last year, and I don't
the studies we have from last year,
we're saying that European cloud
providers are standing for 16% of the market share, and the 3 dominant players, AWS, Microsoft and Google, were 75%. Do you have an association?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. We don't have an association. We have one. We have different coalition.
Another topic you want to raise later on about industrial policy and
this might be something we want to discuss later on. of the ecosystem scattered in Europe. It's a situation, I'd say, of this ecosystem is progressing, and it's still a very recent sector, so you can't find traditional trade association as you have, like, say, in more traditional sectors. Antonio. So, the topic is interesting and the answer is not unique. Is there the space for cloud operators that are not a hyperscaler? First answer is given by the market. Yes, the answer is yes, because the European operator, not only Italian, Scaleway, but also others, in the last 2-3 years grow like double digit. So there is a market that can absorb them. This is not an opinion, it's a fact. The question, though, is decline in some sub-aspects that are not secondary. Giving for granted that there are some players, these are not the giants, but are on the market and grow double digit, means that a part of the market appreciates them and there is a dialogue and they meet the need of the market. The same idea is it taken by the public administration, and the answer is no. Public administration don't think there is a real market of cloud provider, but everything is played uniquely with the global bigs. Why is that? Innocenzo knows me. I speak as I think. Public administration thinks this because the big tech, the global big tech, have a huge competence in the lobbying. They are strong, they are organized, and they have competences. So we have this dual organization. There is a real market that works. Sorry, but with real money that recognizes a different market, so much so to give it space and growth, and another part of the market that should have a different role, but unfortunately works with the monopoly coins coming from debts, and there is nobody responsible for this. He doesn't really care about getting to know the market. I'm sorry to say so, but that's the point. Why are we now talking about this in this historical moment with PNR and PSN? Because up until 3 years ago, we had local cloud provider, we had global cloud provider. Thanks God, all of them were prosper, global and local, because the market was expanding. In this market, it was enough to be good, to meet the market. This topic up until 3 years ago was pointless to lots of people, but everybody was okay. In France, in Italy, in France, we have lots of things in Europe. Okay, we were not pushed back. In the last 3 years, this became a topic. Why? Because we had the public cost due to the delay in the digital world. This was given especially in the public expenses. We wanted to catch up, and so we got it to the public expenses. This had two possibilities in front of it. This is something common in Europe. Two possibilities. Being a client, and so being there and buying cloud, or being a market maker. As the expense is big, they could use this cost to do not an industrial politic, that is a description I don't like, but using this money to give a direction to the development of a country, not only on the automation of the procedures of public administration. And now, honestly, we're not talking of something too complex, but using this to give an address on the offer that could use, as it happened, and the giant got it on the United States, where the public role really gave a huge spin to the ability of the market. Would have been sufficient to do the same, but we took different choices. We did something different. Michele, is the public administration favoring the global players? Well, we are the last three lobbyists. Yes, I agree. The big national clouds, the hyperscaler, do get the lion's share. But back to your question, I'd like to answer it to you. First of all, yes, there's still space, and there will be space for the smaller provider. Italy is a country created by different industrial districts, not all in Milan or Rome. We need to serve the territory. There are micro industrial sectors that require some peculiarities, so there is space for the cloud provider, especially in a market that is huge. We are like 5-6 years behind compared to the Anglo-Saxon world. We believe that there is so much of a product. We have a small region we can sell to anybody, and that anybody can create a local cloud to get in region we want to reach. Second question, second part of my answer. When we talk about national project where we need to invest quick timing, big amount of money, the hyperscaler have an advantage, not only because they are a lobby, but also of the competences, of the technologies that probably small providers cannot match in the short run, obviously. Maybe to local nation offices. So the space is there, especially because the market is expanding and the margins are important, but the public cost was, let's say, gotten toward that scale. In France, Lucas, public contract has been favoring the global player or the local ones. I may not have the figures, but for sure, in the national public insurance, the hyperscalers are prevailing. But first of all, there may be an overreaction. We always hear that collectively we cannot satisfy the needs of potential large clients, administration, big groups, which is wrong. Today, cloud markets are reached a level of maturity that make them a commodity market. A cloud is about offering compute, storage, and network. And indeed, the same goes to European cloud players. We have such a rich portfolio. And do the clients need those portfolio? Actually, no. The experience shows it. So before saying, we are smaller and so we cannot satisfy the needs of the customers,
can concretely say that we can satisfy those needs. we can scale.
We can satisfy those needs. We can scale. If you compare the level of investment
at global level, of course, it makes no sense.
At a global level, it makes no sense, but at regional level, for national needs, it makes much sense. So there is also
constant need to deconstruct myths.
Why there is the constant need to deconstruct those myths we can have about the abilities of smaller players in Europe that do not satisfy the needs of major players and administration. Thank you. So, from here, let's move to the second theme, like naturally. Shall we abandon the market, doing everything, or and see who will prevail in the local industry next to the global one, or do we also need a state intervent, and which one? Because we talk about a model that focuses on some national champions, also with considering, I don't know if the PSN could be seen as like this. The public cost could be an instrument, but we saw that it can give different results and opposite to the one we hope for if we want to grow. Or maybe we can harmonize the rules so to allow a market that is a little bit more homogeneous, and that might be the system we get from the Gaia X. So having a system that is a main administration and operability. What could be the answer, Antonio? Well, it's complex. For sure, nowadays we accept it as a model that is sub-optimus, but it works. Where we have some people selling stuff and some people selling stuff and saying that we have the first thing to the price of the second. So overall, I don't see this badly. The market approach overall works, but the market gives some distorted versions as well. Either when it's too small, or when it's too big, or when there is asymmetry of some pieces of the market, some distortions might become major. One of them is the public one. We talk about billions of euros in an amount of time that is not the one we have in the market, and so it's a distortion, and we can't consider that as anything different. Another one is the competition. A market is such when it's competitive. It's competitive when the anti-competing practices are impossible or cancelled. And this is another point, because I know it's not much technological, but the competition is something important, because the market, to be healthy, needs to avoid this problem.
No, ma lo so. Paradossalmente, uno degli aspetti che certe volte mi fanno,
one of the aspects that sometimes I can't understand, because I hear some surreal stuff, something we already seen, not yesterday, years ago, in the telco. So, I hear very long discussions on something that, as an internet provider, is IP already matched in its history. It is weird for me to have it without taking into account whatever was in the past. Now, to say, the market can happen. Yes, no, well, the market is what we have, so we are talking about what we have. We need to pay attention that it works. So today, what are we talking about? We are talking about an element of distortion. Up until the public money, this discussion was not a topic. Overall, the market was, we had the big tech, we had all the, then we have the public one, and then we had the distortion. This is a strong distortion. It's really dangerous because you get it in a market where the market was having a different path that is now generated by the big tech. I'm not an economist, but the concept of market has some parts that cannot be changed. There is a plurality of question and need. If this is not matched, we don't have the market. We are going. We have different good subjects that polarized lots of the demand. But other operators were doing the same, as I said before. When in this scene we have a distortion that brings a higher concentration, and this happens with economical resources that are para-market, this is something that should make us think. Now, I close on something that is not less important, but also the consortium Airbus, we talked about that. This is about deciding if some parts of the industry should be removed by the market or not, because the PSN, in the end, didn't have the strength to remove from the market a demand. So, as everybody knows now, using the PSN is not compulsory. This is another point, because otherwise that meant remove it from the market. Oracle is in between position because it's an hyperscaler, but it's not the best one, the biggest one. So you also need to pay attention to the others. Yes, that's true. But we are between the three hyperscalers, so we are part of this phenomena in the public commissions. Talking about the PSN, but also evaluating what is happening in other countries, I often see the three elements you talked about. We have some parts. We always have some patterns where you have the incumbent, the telco incumbent, the in-house from the government, the champion of the national technology, and so on. So the big ones start from a local partner, because the hyperscale cannot act in the public scale without being in a local partnership. And then, yes, there is a huge help of the state. This distortion we were talking about, part in like European funds, but this helps accelerating and also helps the public administration, for example in the PSN, to start some to cloud that otherwise wouldn't be reached fast. And the third element, let's not forget that the hyperscale role is less than 25-20%. So if we talk about national hyperscale, we have the exchanger provider, the data center provider, all the systems, the system integration, and so on and so forth. So in the end, these are projects that are national, where we have components of different parts. Yes, the hyperscaler in the national one is for the cloud services, yes, but whatever is around is a national system that creates a national income. Luca, back to France. Do you think there is a competitive market, a sufficiently competitive market that creates an open field to everybody, or is it necessary to infiltrate the market competition, to ask the state to intervene somehow? I would love to leave it to the market, as we said. An anecdote. For products of equivalent politic of hyperscalers, we can be 30 to 40% cheaper. But it doesn't boost all the clients to Scaleway. So there are some practices that are identified not in France, but also in the US, have this such practices. So there is indeed a clear role for the national of European authorities to this. There is a great level field and a loyal competition conditions. On my side, I have to say that I don't have any issue endorsing this term. You were more reluctant about just observing the manpower. If you look at the US, you have the US public authorities. Most of the companies from the Silicon Valley would not prosper from another sector. Today we have this DoD spending. It consolidated competitiveness to in the US, also to the JEDI contract with $10 billion. With $10 billion sailing, it's not the only reason, but it's much easier to become competitive on global markets when you benefit from such a large amount of money. And in Europe, local players such as Scaleway, Deos, Aruba are not benefiting from such enormous market from the public authorities, and they're still there, which shows that we are competitive indeed. Because otherwise, with such harsh competition, we wouldn't be competitive, we wouldn't be offering quality, we would just be swallowed by the competition of the hyperschedule. So on my side, the industrial policy is not oriented toward a European preference or protectionism, but just based on what is already working in the manpower, just to compete on the profile. Is something pre-module, and we mentioned I worked in the space sector before. It's completely different, but when you see the strategy of the digital transformation, the various potential shift in the shape and the respect. So the predicted procurement is important, the objectifying criterion is important, channeling potential, being responsible, create and generate values on the continent, but also some kind of corporate responsibility. So clearly, there is room for a reflection in this respect, not to restrict ourselves, but to base it in our good recipes of manpower. And one more reaction, two quick reactions. You mentioned Airbus. I believe on the French example, in 2010, France wanted to create a sovereign cloud, almost from scratch, created two industrial consortiums on legacy players and managing providers, always with this, I'm not going to say fantasy, but with this goal of two big champions, two big best of the cloud. It failed because starting from scratch, a complex cloud project is impossible. So 10 years later, now we believe we need to rely on what is the richness of Europe in the telco system, from the data center to the software layers, without dream of recreating from scratches this structure that will definitely fail. This is important for me. Very, very interesting what you say about France, because the Italian model of the previous government was based on the French experience. By the way, we are talking about competitions, parallels with the telco. At the moment in Brussels, they are having a data act that was not exactly understood in many capitals, and inside it has some norms for the switching and migrating clients from one operator to the other, forcing, non-obstaculating these clients toward new providers. So the Data Act corresponds to what it was in 2000, the abandoning of open loop and the portability of the number. So it's a fundamental importance for the concurrency of the market. So all the operators that now see the cloud as a market that is interesting should activate to defend this Data Act that is already in an advanced stage. We have little chance to intervene. And as we are a little bit ahead of time, a quick comment on the sovereignty of the data that we know it's one of the critique themes on the use of the cloud, especially on the joining of foreign clouds. Let's start with Michele. Yeah, briefly. The national clouds are all national, as we said. France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Ireland, they're all national clouds, so we don't have a spam controller of a European version, even though there would not be a block into this. Some governments are moving toward this type of accentuation of sovereignty of this data, and also for the national politics. What do? We try to be inside all these projects as much as possible, giving cloud technology in consortiums with the governments. And also we built 2 cloud regions, one in Frankfurt and one in Spain, in Madrid, to give services like government clouds to all those countries or entities in the European nation that would like to do it, moving away from the borders of the nation. They are created by the European nation, so they are below the parameter of the norms of the European Union. Antonio, closed topic or other? So first of all, let me tell you about the sovereignty. Regarding this, the idea of national sovereignty is a trap. I would like to use a sentence from Roberto Loro, which is digital independence. That is softer, but it's much more important. Rather than talking about national sovereignty, and the colleague says, well, we have the cloud, we have the nation, what's the problem? No, the theme is the digital independence. When we move, as Rodotam said, the habeas corpus digital of the person in the cloud, is the cloud truly independent? Meaning, the resources I use as a country are in my control and not in control of all the subjects. You know, we talked about it a lot. The question is not obvious. But today, the idea of digital independence should interest way more people, because we live in another problem, which is the energetic independence. We are under huge stress for the European economy for a mistake in the build of the supply chain of energy. We don't have a resilience model because we're not independent. Now, we are building up again exactly the same pattern with the cloud. We created a model of the cloud that my colleague might appreciate, but it doesn't follow any of the independent thought. This is a check, a fact. We moved all the information technology of the country in one subject, controlled by others, where controlling doesn't mean open and closing door. It means understanding how it works, knowing how the encryption of the data is controlled, how other things are controlled. So this, we decided to sacrifice this. We can't go back now. Now, this is done. Now we have problems in between those who won and those who lost, but the thing is done. It's a tombstone, probably not, for two reasons. Personally, believing that we can match the timing, it's not something I believe. And this might create some added tensions with Europe, with money and such. So over this I do have some questions. But also, let me tell all the operators that it's now clear to everybody that the PSN is one of the options, but it's not the only one. We, internet service provider before cloud provider, we are used working in difficult situations, and so thanks to some solution we created some acts. What I see is that probably the PSN will take longer. I don't want to be bad luck, but this thing will be different because the historical moment was different. The way the business plan was created, for the cost of the energy, for many different details, that the moment you start, you have the problem with the execution. And so there is space. Also because the public money, being so much, still, if it's small, we're still talking about billions. So this is in our hand. And trying to be good enough and intercept those smaller accounts. Even with the smaller accounts, we could do something interesting. Obviously, we do have what the colleague was saying. Other countries, like the US, use the public money to make the local player grow and have them compete in a global scale. We couldn't. This is the real problem. Let's hope it's not too late. Lucas, we know that France has been a front runner in the matter of data sovereignty. But in reality, is it a paradise or a hell for data sovereignty?
Sorry, I didn't get the full
There were some French ministers which
I don't understand.
saying we have to protect our data.
There were some ministers screaming that you need to protect the data against the big players, but then what's going on in reality? It's a factor in the policy debate in France, but we do have some difficulties. It's the same when we talk about security. By referring to sovereignty, you don't know exactly what you are grasping at the end of the day. And this is one of the limits of the French politics implemented so far. We have a good ratio, but if you want to be so strict about sovereignty, you need to get back to concrete notions of risk and dependency and all of this. As I said, everything is changing: data center, hardware, software. So, where do you put the cursor, depending on the use case, on the sensitiveness of the data? France has been trying to improve the overall and the level of risks for undertaking these of the administration and of the big groups.
But it's hardly a black or white situation. So
it's only a black and white situation. We are progressing to this, and we understand that yes, we go back to the risk management, and it's safer to reason in this way and go back to dependencies, which one are acceptable, which one are not. Can we be sovereign on a short run on the European technologies? For the French legal entity, yes, but we are creating some danger. And so, yes, we move step by step. And the French authorities are also there because in the computing market, it's not something that is very easy to understand from the outside. So the public authorities are also progressing step by step to improve the maturity of the ecosystem and to make sure that all kind of offers can have the space. Once again, given the market.
40% growth per year in this market segment.
Sovereignty is one thing, but again, the risk management,
5, 10, 15 years,
maybe in 5, 10, 15 years, we get some synergies, and also something has been raised in France to make progress about policy. This notion of sovereignty is, we have different meanings because we are between France and Italy, but if you go to Eastern Europe, they wouldn't have the same understanding of this, which is normal. So it would be better to localize the data on the soil operated by domestic providers or operators, especially in the Baltic state. Could be outside the notion of dependency. We are coming back from this. For the policy debate. I don't know if we still have time. Can we have a question from the public?
Sono Roberto Beneducci, lavoro
Roberto Beneducci, I work
cloud provider. Allora,
Coretech, cloud provider. I would like to help Baldassarra, whom I don't know, but it's the only one who got some themes that were rather hot. I know that nobody wants to talk about them. The problem of the energy that now we have is clearly a signal that if we don't take care of our interests, we do the same thing, we don't know when, but when somebody could decide that we need to turn off everybody. We have the data center, the internet exchange, we have people, because they won't come from the outside to do the activity on the system of public administration. We are talking about national cloud, not what the enterprise
Quindi,
can give.
esattamente che cosa ci mancava?
So exactly,
Quando facciamo
what are we
una
missing?
cordata dove c'è
When
Sogei e Cassa
we
Depositi e Prestiti, vuol dire
get
che abbiamo già fatto una
Sogei and Cassa Depositi e
La
Prestiti,
la domanda è
have
perché siamo
already
arrivati a questo punto e perché
a choice.
diciamo
Why?
in una
How did
situazione
we
in cui
come to
siamo
this
adesso
point?
e
And
dove
why
dal
do we
punto
say
di
that in
vista
this
non abbiamo
situation right
nessun'altra
now,
possibilità
well,
che
we
non
don't
trovare una
have
soluzione a
any
questo, perché
other
stiamo creando un
possibility
problema.
but finding a
Perché
solution?
diciamo che
We are
la
creating
strada
a
ormai è
problem.
tracciata. Quando la
Why
storia
do we say that
poco fa,
the path is
realmente
done?
anche oggi
When
ha
the
dimostrato
story,
che non possiamo
the recent
dipendere
one,
totalmente da te.
told us we cannot be dependent from others.
La domanda è sull'autonomia tecnologica, se possiamo in qualche modo riassumerla, che è un aspetto della sovranità digitale, eccetera.
So, technological sovereignty, okay. I agree with him, yes, obviously.
La situazione. Io non sono in grado di dare una risposta a lui del perché non possiamo prendere una scelta diversa.
I don't know why. I don't know why we can't have a different, we can take a different choice. I would do it, but
Del perché non l'abbiamo fatto.
I can't give you an answer of why we didn't do it. I might have an idea, we might manage in short time this type of buying rather than different one. The first, I don't have an answer. I don't know if my colleagues do. I don't have any. We talk about the public buy, but banks and multinationals, how do they act?
Come ho detto prima che iniziasse questo dibattito,
As I said
il mondo
before,
funzionava. E quindi
before
c'era comunque
starting
un
this,
dialogo tra
the world was working. We had a dialogue between people and banks and public states.
dal cloud,
Everybody
verso
was
i big tech,
going to the
verso i
cloud,
provider nazionali, verso
toward the big
tutto quello che
techs and national
Quello di cui
providers
non
and
ci
so on and so
rendiamo
forth.
conto che adesso il
What we
marketing
don't
di
see
questa
is that right
è
now
essa stessa
the
il
marketing
problema.
of this
Perché
operation
nel momento in cui
is itself the
al CEO
problem, because
di
the
una della
moment
generica banca o
to the
della generica
CEO
enterprise
of
arriva
a bank
l'informazione
or
che non
an
si può
enterprise,
fare cloud senza un
they realize
anche colui che
something
stava
that
lavorando
you
con
can't get the
Seeweb
cloud
o
without
con
the
Porcu
three
o
big
con
tech.
dice, ma
Even
il
working
CTO
with
dice, guarda che
Scaleway
qua
or Coretech or
dice
whatever,
che senza
they
quei
they call the CTO and say, oh, without those three we can't work. So once again, we have a distortion that is now penalizing the classic evolution that before was moving easily. Sorry, just let me tell you a distortion. After the 2019, when talking about a national cloud, while in Italy nobody of the big tech came beside Amazon but just to serve in the Equinix. Everybody arrived for the APA. So right now, if I need the rec, I have a problem. Please. Michele, I don't know if you have something to add. Well, first of all, I'm not an historian, so I wouldn't be able to explain why. I don't know. Regarding us, we didn't come here for the national committee, because for the committee we'll have dedicated structure. So we won't use our cloud region. We use this because it's ready. Obviously the planning of the region is done years before, like 1.5 years before. We are in the national territory because we have a mature cloud. We have 40 regions around the world. Italy, together with all the regions, are ready. For the PSN, we are developing, not only us, but also Hyperscaler, dedicated solutions, because there are requests that come from the partner and the government and other actors. So we can't use easily these infrastructures we have in Milan.
Lucas, the very final word.
Lucas, very final word before you fly back to Paris.
Italy centered, so I'm not sure I'm able
Your question was Italy-centered, so I'm not sure I can answer that. Probably from our alternative players' perspective. What I can say is the answer you get very often from big clients, so big prospects. You may have already heard. Nobody has ever been set for IBM using the well-known the reputation of reliability player. A minimum level of risk perception creates these alternative players or to these rising stars. So there's a big barrier we are facing. We need to prove that this is what we're doing, and we have different European players. Maybe it's not a straightforward answer, but this is potentially what we're doing. To understand also the criteria of decision. Thank you. So we end now. Sorry, we apologize. The next panel. Thank you everybody.
Antonio Baldassarra, Lucas Buthion, e arrivederci all'anno prossimo con il cloud nazionale 2 anni dopo.